space. And with stereophonic recording, the feeling of space and perspective is brought to you.
Hello and welcome to another album review on this channel. My name is Josh, and for today's album review, I'm going to be reviewing the album Reachin, a new refutation of time and space by the group Digable Planets. Digable Planets is an alternative hip-hop group from Brooklyn, New York. Digable Planets was formed in 1987 as a solo rap project by Ishmael Butler, with Craig Irving and Mariana Vieira later joining the group in 1989. In 1992, the group signed a record contract with Pendulum Records, and all three group members moved to Brooklyn, New York. After releasing just 2 studio albums, the group broke up in 1995 because of creative differences. But in 2005, the group reunited for a reunion tour and released a compilation album titled Beyond the Spectrum: The Creamy Spy Chronicles. This album included remastered versions of the group's most popular songs, as well as previously unavailable songs and remixes. In 2016, the group held another reunion tour and released a live album titled Digable Planets Live in 2017. Even though the group hasn't released any new material since the 1990s, they still currently perform live today. The band's music features elements of alternative hip-hop, jazz rap, and acid jazz. They have released 2 studio albums, with their last album, Blowout Comb, being released in 1994. But the album I'm reviewing today is their debut studio album called Reachin, with the subtitle A New Refutation of Time and Space. The title Reachin is a reference to the 1950s and 60s jazz records, where the titles would end in apostrophes sometimes, such as Moaning by Art Blanky and the Jazz Messengers, and Cooking with Miles Davis Quintet by the Miles Davis Quintet. The subtitle, A New Refutation of Time and Space, is a reference to an essay by an Argentinian writer named Jorge Luis. This essay was written between the years of 1944 and 1946 and was titled A New Refutation of Time. This album was released on February 9th, 1993, under the label of Pendulum Records. Pendulum Records was a hip-hop oriented imprint label being distributed by Elektra Records. The label has released albums for artists such as The Lords of the Underground, Melissa Morgan, and the Boogie Monsters. This album was produced by Ishmael Butler, with Shane Faber and Mike Mangini assisting with the production duties. The production on this record leans heavily on classic jazz samples and was inspired by other jazz rap albums such as The Low End Theory by A Tribe Called Quest, No More Mr. Nice Guy by Gang Starr, Straight Out the Jungle by the Jungle Brothers, and Now the Legacy Begins by Dream Warriors. The members of this group include Ishmael Butler, who also goes by the rap name of Butterfly. You have Mariana Vieira, who goes by the rap name of Ladybug Mecca. And finally, you have Craig Irving, who goes by the rap name of Doodlebug. Each member had nicknames for themselves that were based on the names of insects, because the concept of this group, which you'll hear about when I talk about this album, was that the 3 members were insects from outer space that are living in New York in order to pursue a hip-hop career. There were 3 singles released for this album. The first was Rebirth of Slick, in parentheses, Cool Like That. The second was Where I'm From, and the third was Nickel Bags. The genres on this album include alternative hip-hop and jazz rap. And in terms of reception, this album was very positively reviewed when it came out. AllMusic gave it 4.5 out of 5. Pitchfork gave it 8.7 out of 10. Rolling Stone gave it 4 out of 5. And Spin Magazine gave it a 9 out of 10. This album peaked at number 15 on the US charts in 1993. And now I'm going to talk about each song on this album. I'm going to give you my thoughts and a little bit of background on these songs. After that, I'm going to give you my top 3 songs from this album in no particular order. I'm going to go over my overall thoughts on this album, and I'm going to give you my overall rating for this album. So the first song on this album is called It's Good to Be Here. This was written by Digable Planets. The main samples used for this song are Rain Dance by Herbie Hancock from his 11th studio album Sextant, released in 1973, and Saba de Orphis by Grant Green from his album Iron City, released in 1972. And I really like this song a lot. I think it's a great intro track to introduce the listener to the Digable Planets sound, their signature jazz rap style, the jazz samples that they use for their beats. The beat in this song was really smooth, catchy, chill, perfect for the rapping style and flow that this group uses. This song starts off with this really atmospheric instrumental intro that fits the alien theme that the group's going for. It has this creepy, eerie sound to it when it first comes on that really helps create this alien atmosphere. And the theme of this album actually reminded me a lot of the Outkast album ATLiens, which was their second studio album, where they had similar themes of them kind of being like aliens coming to this planet to rap. It gave me similar vibes to that album. I like that throughout this song, they're rapping about who they are, where they're from, what they're about, really introducing themselves as a group to the listener. I think they did a great job with that, and I think that's what you should do on an intro track to an album. I enjoyed all the verses in this song. I thought all 3 members killed their verses. My favorite verse is Butterfly's first verse. It's the first verse you hear. His wordplay is very clever, has that jazzy slam poetry spoken word style to it that I really enjoy. It's very laid back and chill, and it just becomes their signature style, and it really helps them to stand out, especially during this time in hip-hop where a lot of the focus was more on gangster rap with groups like NWA, the Ghetto Boys, Ice-T. I just think it's really cool that you have a hip-hop group that's just doing something different, coming from a different perspective. And in the last 2 minutes of this song, there's this skit where the band's introducing themselves to this audience. They're like in a jazz lounge, and they're keeping this alien insects concept, talking about they're from outer space. And I just thought this part was really cool. It really helps create this vibe, creates the concept for this album. And overall, I really like this song. I think it's a perfect opener for this album and just a great introduction to this group. The second song on this album is called Pacifics. This was written by Digable Planets, and the main sample that they used for this song was Davika Goddess by Lonnie Liston Smith and the Cosmic Echoes from their studio album Visions of a New World, released in 1975. And I absolutely love this song. This is one of my favorite hip-hop beats of all time. It's so just pure jazz, just very smooth, catchy, interesting, cool. I love the chorus chants where they keep singing New York is red hot over and over again, has a great melody to it. And this is just a really cool song. You know, it makes you feel like you're in New York with them. As they're describing what it's like to be in New York, what they see around them, the corner stores, just the people. Also, the bass line in the song is one of my favorite bass lines. You know, it's so classic. It starts off the song, and it just gets stuck in your head all day once you hear it. All three members have amazing verses on this song. They all kill their verses. They're rapping about, you know, normal day in the life for them in New York. You get to really hear their personalities come out because they each have, you know, kind of different stuff that they're talking about. Lady Bird and Doodlebug share a verse in this song, so they kind of split one verse, with Butterfly kind of getting the main two verses, which happens a lot in this band. This band is kind of like mainly a Butterfly project, with Ladybug and Doodlebug kind of getting, you know, either splitting verses or just getting smaller parts. So you'll see this happens throughout the album. But again, all the three members killed their verses on this song, and I actually really like the Ladybug Doodlebug verse where they go back and forth. I thought that sounded really cool. But my favorite verse on this song is Butterfly's second verse, where he references the New York Knicks and Hawaii 5-0. I just thought that was really like cool wordplay that he was doing, and really cool references for the time. And his flow is just amazing on this beat. So overall, this is one of my favorite songs on this album, and I'm honestly really surprised this wasn't a single. I mean, it's just a super catchy song and a really great second track to this album. The third song on this album is called Where I'm From. This is the first single to appear on this album so far. This is written by Digable Planets, and the main sample used for this song was Ain't Nothing Wrong by Casey and the Sunshine Band from their second studio album, which was self-titled and released in 1975. And I thought this song was great. So far, this album's had a perfect start for me. The beat on this song is much more funky and R&B feeling compared to the last two beats, which were more jazz focused. And I just really like the vibe of this song. You know, it gives me this summertime feel to it, a very chill, very relaxing vibe that's just really fun to listen to. You know, again, on this song, I love all the verses. Each member is rapping about the neighborhoods that they grew up in. And I think that's a good topic for the song like this, because it allows the listeners to get to know each member individually. So, I mean, from these first three songs, you really getting to know each member of this group. And this is the first song where Ladybug and Doodlebug get their own solo verses, you know, and they're fully length. So I like that they got that and they get a chance to really shine on this song. My favorite verse on this song is actually Ladybug's verse. She has such a smooth flow that at times it sounds like she's singing / rapping in kind of like a Lauryn Hill style. It's just very seamless. It seems like it comes naturally from her. And I always felt like she was an underappreciated rapper, especially as a female rapper. A lot of times when people mention, you know, the top female rappers, I don't see her name a lot, you know. During this period, you had artists like Queen Latifah, MC Lyte, Yo-Yo. These were more famous female artists. But Ladybug, I mean, she is so great at flowing, and just her style just works so well over these jazz beats. You know, I don't know how well she would do on other instrumentation, but for the jazz R&B beats that they use in this group, she kills it for me. She's one of my favorite female MCs, and it's a shame that she really didn't get the fame and the recognition that I feel like she deserved. But overall, you know, I really like this song a lot. The beat, the flow, the wordplay, and just the overall summertime vibe of this song, I think is just really great. And so far, this album for me is off to a perfect start. The fourth song on this album is called What Cool Breezes Do. This was written by Digable Planets, and the main samples that they used in this song were Superfluous by Eddie Harris from his studio album Instant Death, released in 1972, and Mystique Blues by the Crusaders from their studio album Crusaders 1, released in 1972. And I didn't like this song. I thought this beat was okay, but there's this super loud saxophone sample that they use throughout this song that I really didn't like. I just felt like it didn't mesh well with the underlying beat that they had, and just it ruined the whole beat for me, honestly. And for me, the beat in a hip-hop song is one of, if not the most important part of a hip-hop song. I know for some other people it may be wordplay or just the rhymes themselves, the bars, but for me, the beat and just the music itself is really, really important and can make or break a song for me, because I feel like when you have a bad beat, it can ruin the flow of a rapper. Even really good rappers, when they rap over beats that don't sound good or something's off, it can mess up their flow and just the overall vibe of a song. And I feel like for this beat, it just kind of ruined the vibe that this album was going for, especially for a song called What Cool Breezes Do. You know, I was expecting more of like a laid back beat, but that saxophone sample is just way too much for me. And I feel like the flow of all three members on the song were off, especially Doodlebug's flow. For me, Doodlebug is my least favorite rapper of this group. I don't think he's a bad rapper, but he's also not a great rapper. He's just kind of okay, and he has a tendency sometimes to fall off of the beat. He has this kind of slower, old school style that for some of these beats that are more complex, I can hear him kind of falling off the beat, kind of losing his flow at parts. The hook of this song is also really bad. The saxophone sample comes back in, it's even louder, and you really can't even hear them singing the hook because the saxophone sample with the beat is just so loud. It feels like maybe there's a mixing issue or something, I don't know. I thought Butterfly's verse was okay. For me, he's the best rapper of this group, so a lot of the songs even I don't like, his verses kind of save it a little bit. But overall, this song I did not like, and it's an easy skip for me. The fifth song on this album is called Time and Space, with the subtitle A New Refutation of. This was written by Digable Planets, and the main sample that they used for this song was Mambo Bounce by Sonny Rollins from his compilation album Sonny Rollins with the Modern Jazz Quartet, released in 1956. And I also really did not like this song. The beat has this New Jack swing feel to it that I actually think is kind of cool. I think it could work, but the beat is poorly produced in this song. Just the transitions between Butterfly's first verse and the bridge interlude section that Doodlebug does, I think is terrible. That's one of the worst transitions on this album. And then during this bridge section, you have Doodlebug, who I already mentioned before is not the best rapper, and he's rapping over this beat out of time. His flow's all messed up, and it just sounds really bad. And I feel like if they were going to go with this New Jack swing feel song, they should have kept that same beat throughout the song. But when they switch it to this other, a more jazzy beat during the bridge, it just kind of ruins. I don't know, it just sounds really bad. It doesn't really mesh well together. I think Butterfly, when he came up during the bridge section, he did a much better job than Doodlebug. And I think that's just because Butterfly's a better rapper, so he can kind of stay on beat, but still, even then, the beat just wasn't working for me. And then they finish rapping around the 2-minute mark, and then the remaining minute and a half of this song is just an instrumental with that same beat that I just found very boring and repetitive, and I just wasn't a big fan of. So overall, I really did not like this song. I actually like this song worse than the last song, What Cool Breezes Do. I feel like this song is even worse, and for me, this is another skippable track when I re-listen to this album. The sixth song on this album is called Rebirth of Slick, with the subtitle of Cool Like That. This is the second single to appear on this album, and this song actually won a Grammy Award for Best Rap Performance by a Duo or Group at the 1994 Grammys, which I just thought was pretty cool. This song was written by Digable Planets, and the main samples that they used when they were making this song were Stretching by Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers from their studio album Reflections in Blue, which was released in 1979, and also Impeach the President by the Honey Drippers, which was a single released by the band in 1973. And, you know, I thought this song was amazing. I mean, this is a classic 90s hip-hop song. This is the song that this band, this group is most known for. This is by far their biggest hit at the time and just in general. In terms of mainstream, this was kind of their one big hit, and this is why a lot of people kind of consider this group as a one-hit wonder, because this hit is the one that actually made it to the mainstream. But yeah, I mean, I'm just a huge fan of this song. This beat is just iconic. It starts off with this great bass line played on a double bass that makes you feel like you're in a jazz lounge in like the 1960s. Just creates this really cool vibe to it. The beat is a very simple jazz hip hop beat that just works. You know, it's very chill, it's very catchy, it's very cool, kind of like how the song title says, you know, cool like that. It's just a really cool beat. You know, the drums, the brass, the synths, they all come together to really make this beat perfect. And then the rapping on this song is also great. This is probably one of my favorite rapping performances in terms of all three members just killing their verses on this song. Actually, my favorite verse on the song is Doodlebug's verse. And like I mentioned before, Doodlebug's probably my least favorite rapper, but he really kills it with this verse on this song. I think it just fits him perfectly. And I feel like each verse fits each member perfectly. And just how they go back and forth and they, you know, each member will like come in on another person's verse and add like some ad libs. It just works so well, you know. I like how at the end of each bar or each verse for all these members, the last bar is a cappella. So it has this like really cool effect going straight into the chorus. And then the chorus is great, you know, the cool like that chorus. It just flows really nicely. It's very catchy, and it gives this song this like slam poetry feel to it, you know. Even the music video where they're like in this jazz lounge and they're all snapping, and it just creates this really cool feel that just feels so different from, you know, the normal like gangster rap hip hop of this time period that was happening and that was so popular. I love the outro to the song. You have all the members going back and forth with each other, bar for bar, you know, talking about, you know, what makes them different, what they like about themselves. And it's just like a really positive message, a really fun message. And yeah, overall, this is one of the coolest hip hop songs of all time. You know, this is a song that is just, even though it was made in 1993, it's still relevant. It's still fun today. And it's just a perfect combination between jazz and hip hop. To me, this is like the perfect single and representation of the jazz rap scene at this time. The 7th song on this album is called Last of the Spiddyocks. This was written by Digable Planets, and I couldn't find any information on the samples that they used for this song. It's possible that they actually brought in studio musicians and played it live. I'm not sure. But overall, I mean, I was a huge fan of this song. The beat on this song is this very simple jazz beat that becomes more complex and interesting as it goes along, which I really enjoyed. The bass line, the drums on this beat are super catchy, super smooth, and just they all work really, really well together. You know, this is one of my favorite beats on this album. It's very easygoing, very easy to dance to groove to. And the song also has this kind of dark atmospheric vibe to it, while still being a fun song. And I like that kind of dichotomy, that contrast that you hear throughout this song. I thought that was just really cool, and I really enjoyed this beat a lot. I liked all the verses on this song. My favorite verse is Ladybug's verse. I think she kills her verse in this song. And again, Ladybug, I feel, is underrated. You know, when she gets her opportunities, she really, you know, kills her verses. You know, you can tell she puts time into them, and just her rapping style works really well on this song. I love how they sample this trumpet solo in the song right before Doodlebug's verse. And it feels like a real trumpet solo. That's why I'm thinking it's possible they brought in studio musicians and they actually didn't use samples, because it just flows so perfectly with all the other aspects of this song. And it really makes this song feel like a jazz song with hip hop over it, which I thought was a really cool mesh, you know? And overall, I just really like this song a lot. I like that they're switching up the style of jazz beats that they're using, and they're going into different styles of jazz. And I like this more like darker atmospheric style that they use in this song. So yeah, I was a huge fan of this song and I really enjoyed it. The 8th song on this album is called Jimmi Diggin' Cats. This was written by Digable Planets, and the main sample that they use for this song is Summer Madness by Kool and the Gang. This is from their 5th studio album, Light of Worlds, which was released in 1974. And I really like this song a lot. A lot of that has to do with this beat. I think this beat is amazing. And that Summer Madness sample that they used. The original song from Kool and the Gang is a song I grew up on. I'm a huge fan of that song. And anytime I hear a beat with using that sample, it just always works. I know famously the song Summertime by DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, which was off of their 4th studio album, Home Base, which was released in 1991. So 2 years before this, they used that same sample, and it just works so well in that song, and works just as well in this song. You know, it has a different flavor than that song, but still gives you that summertime vibes. This song starts off with this really cool skit where the group members are talking about basically what if all these artists and people from the 1960s and 70s were in our time. You know, what happens if the 1960s and 70s were taking place right now, which for them was the early 1990s. And I thought that was just a really cool concept. And they agree at the end that Jimi Hendrix would have been a big fan of their music, which is why this song is called Jimmi Diggin' Cats. It's basically a dedication, a tribute to Jimi Hendrix. And this song is basically a Butterfly solo track, because it's basically him rapping 2 verses by himself, and then the other 2 members just have some small talking parts during the bridge section, or slash skit section. You know, it's kind of like a skit slash bridge. But Butterfly kills his verses on this song, especially his first verse. I really enjoyed. He has amazing flow and rhythm that really allows him to ride any beat. And this beat, the Summertime Madness beat is an amazing beat, but not every rapper can ride a beat like this. And I think he just kills his verse on this song. I like that the song ends with this speech sample from Jimi Hendrix, which also they get a snippet of that in the earlier parts of the song too. But at the end, it's basically Jimi Hendrix talking about, if he digs the song, he can dig the cats, which cats obviously means person, artist. So it's basically Jimi Hendrix talking about how you should respect other artists that come before you, your contemporaries, and if you dig the song, then you're gonna dig the cat, So I get that message. I think it's a great message, and it's really cool that they made this tribute to Jimi Hendrix, who is one of my favorite guitarists of all time, one of my favorite musicians of all time. So it's really cool that they gave a tribute to him in this song. And just overall, I thought this song was really good. It's one of my favorite songs on this album. I love the beat, I love the sample that they used, and yeah, just altogether, this is a really, really great song that I really enjoyed. The 9th song on this album is called La Femme Fetal. This was written by Butterfly, and the main sample that they used for this song is called Jazzo Tree by The Last Poets. This was off of their studio album Chastisement, which was released in 1972. And overall, I really enjoyed this song. This is more of a spoken word performance than a rap performance. You have Butterfly, and this is basically a solo track. He's giving this, spoken word poetry in the same style and cadence as Jalil Mansur Nuruddin did on the song Jazzaretti by The Last Poets. This is the song that they sampled this beat from, and Butterfly has said that Jalal is his favorite vocal artist. So clearly this song is heavily inspired by that song and, kind of a tribute to Jalal, kind of like how the last song, Jimmi Diggin' Cats, was a tribute to Jimi Hendrix. And I really like this song a lot. I like Butterfly's performance on this song. He's really good at adapting to different styles. And in this song, he does more of a spoken word performance. And lyrically, Butterfly's talking about, a pretty heavy subject. He's talking about abortion and women having free choice over their own bodies. He's definitely pro-choice, and he talks about how he has a friend who becomes pregnant and she's trying to get an abortion, but she's going through all these financial and legal hoops and all the struggles she has to go through just to get an abortion, to do something that, is part of her own body that she wants to have free choice over. And I think these lyrics are just as relevant today as they were in 1993 when this song came out, because, recently in 2022, Roe v. Wade was overturned and abortions became illegal in certain states, and it caused all these, problems. And it's crazy that Butterfly even references the fact that Roe v. Wade may be overturned in the future and the negative impact that would have on society. So he almost kind of predicts that this could happen. And I just thought this song, at least lyrically, was just really ahead of its time. And Butterfly is the only male rapper I know that's ever really rapped about this subject, especially in the 90s. There probably are other rappers. At least the rappers I know, I was really taken aback that, they even had a song this serious on this album, which is, more of a fun album. But I like that Butterfly's not afraid to talk about, controversial subjects or, subjects that not a lot of people talk about in rap music. And I think he did a great job of getting his point of view across. Whether you agree with him or not, I think he just does a great job of getting that message across. And I feel like this song, it just how poetic and kind of spoken word it is, just makes it so different, makes it stand out on this album. And it really showed me how talented of an MC Butterfly is and how much of a lyricist he is. Some of these lyrics, while being powerful, they're also very clever. The wordplay, the flow, it just works really well together. So overall, I really like this song a lot. I thought it was a really nice change of pace for this album. And yeah, I just thought it was great overall. The 10th song on this album is called Escapism, with the subtitle of Getting Free. This was written by Digable Planets, and the main samples that they used for this song include Lilies of the Nile by the Crusaders. This is from their studio album Southern Comfort, which was released in 1974. You have Watermelon Man by Herbie Hancock, and there's two versions of this song. The one that they sampled is from his 12th studio album Headhunters, which was released in 1973, and this version has more synths and it's a little bit more psychedelic. And the last sample that they used is Mothership Connection with the subtitle of Star Child. This is by Parliament, and this is from their 4th studio album, Mothership Connection, which was released in 1975. And I really like this song. The beat is very minimal, and it has this 70s funk vibe to it that sounds different from any other beat on this album. Most of the beats on this album have more of a jazz, maybe even R&B influence, but this has more of a funk influence. Especially during the chorus, it becomes this more uptown G-funk style beat. And this is before, Doggy Style and, Warren G and Snoop Dogg kind of created that G-funk style rapping. And it's really interesting how they did aspects of that in this chorus. You can really hear that G-funk style. I like that they experimented with their style and switched up the beat for this song, especially, you're coming towards the end of the album. I like some experimentation with their beats so it doesn't become boring. I liked all the verses on this song. My favorite verse is Ladybug's first verse. She does a really good job with her wordplay and her flow. She also sings the chorus in the song, which I think is actually really cool. Again, gives me kind of the Lauryn Hill vibes when she was with the Fugees. And then overall, I just like the message of this song. This message is about seeking freedom and expressing yourself and discovering who you are. It's a very positive song. It's very fun, and I just thought this was overall a really good song. The 11th song on this album is called Appointment at the Fat Clinic. This is written by Digable Planets, and the main sample that they used in this song is called Sneaking in the Back by Tom Scott and the LA Express from their self-titled studio album released in 1974. And I wasn't a big fan of this song. I don't hate it, but I couldn't get into this song. I mean, I feel like the main reason is the beat. Similar to the last song, Escapism, this beat is very minimal, but it's even more minimal than the last song, and it's more boring than the last song. The last song had more of like that funk beat to it. Even though it was minimal, it just had this like different vibe. This song is a lot more boring, a lot more traditional jazz, and it didn't click with me. There's also a saxophone sample that starts to get annoying after a while, and so far on this album, all the saxophone samples just aren't working for me. They don't really know how to integrate it into the beat naturally. It just sounds very unnatural and very stitched together instead of being a part of the beat. So again, it just didn't work for me in this song. I did enjoy the rapping on this song. Doodlebug gives this speech interlude instead of giving a verse, which I wasn't a really big fan of. It just didn't really work for me. I feel like it's mixed badly with Doodlebug sounding way too loud with too much reverb, too much delay. It just doesn't work well, and a lot of that may be just due to the mixing and meshing it with the beat, but it just doesn't work for me. Ladybug and Butterfly both had great verses in this song. They're great rappers. I also liked how they sampled Rebirth of Slick at the end of Butterfly's first verse. And I just thought that was a really cool kind of callback to that song, and just the way they did it. I thought it was really cool and very slick. And overall, I thought this song was okay. Like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of this song, and I did get bored about halfway through, and I think a lot of that had to do with this beat. I think this song would have been way better on a different beat, but with that saxophone sample and just the super minimal instrumentation, it just really didn't do it for me. And it's definitely not a song I would put on a playlist or go out my way to listen to. But in the context of this album, I just thought the song was okay. I don't hate it. If someone likes it, I can see why they like it, but for me, it was just kind of okay. The 12th song on this album is called Nickel Bags. This is the third and last single to appear on this album. This song is written by Digable Planets, and the main samples that they used for this song include Give Me Your Love with the subtitle of Love Song by Curtis Mayfield from his third studio album Superfly, which was released in 1972. Push Push by Herbie Mann from his studio album Push Push, which was released in 1971. And Easin' In by Edwin Starr from his studio album Hell Up in Harlem, released in 1974. And in terms of my thoughts on this song, I absolutely love this song. I think the beat is super smooth and funky and catchy. It keeps your ears active. This is a very easy song to nod your head to. And this is just the classic Digable Planets sound. When I think of Digable Planets, I think of songs like Nickel Bags. It has that super jazzy samples that they use, and just that, rapping style that's more spoken word / poetry, and it just works so well over this instrumentation. My favorite verse on this song is Doodlebug's verse. And, this is a weed song, so it kind of makes sense because Doodlebug is the main stoner of the group. I mean, I'm pretty sure all three of them are stoners, like as you can hear through this song. I mean, this is a weed song. They talk about smoking weed. But Doodlebug, basically all the songs he does on this album reference weed in some form. So it makes sense that he would have, my favorite verse on this song because it's a weed song. Go figure. I mean, it works really well with his style because this is a more chilled, laid back beat. And he has that kind of old school hip hop flow that works really well over a beat like this. And I really enjoyed his verse. Also, this is probably my favorite weed song, at least weed hip hop song that I've heard. A lot of weed songs, they lack, subtlety and creativity, and mostly people like them because of all the weed references and, the great songs to smoke to. They have that like very chill vibe. And this song has all those aspects that make it a great weed song, but to me, what elevates this song over, some of the more, common popular weed songs from, groups like Cypress Hill, Snoop Dogg, I feel like this song is more subtle, and the way they're describing, smoking weed and getting high and, expanding their minds, it's just way more creative and just uses way more clever wordplay than a lot of other weed songs, popular weed songs that they just focus more on the references. And also just the subtlety too. This is a song that you can listen to and you may not even realize that they're talking about weed, especially if you're someone that doesn't smoke weed, doesn't get a lot of the references. They use a subtlety that if you do smoke weed, if you're in that culture, you're gonna like the song even more, you're gonna understand all these references. But if you don't, this is a great song to just chill and vibe out to. So I really like how they made a weed song, which is very popular during the time, but they made it in that Digable Planets style that just works really well. I also really enjoyed the hook for this song. They're great at writing these catchy choruses, and writing catchy choruses in rap songs is not easy. There's plenty of rap songs that I, enjoy the beat, enjoy the rapping on, enjoy the verses, and the choruses just suck. The hooks are terrible. And to write a good hook in a rap song is not easy, and the hook that they wrote in this song is just so catchy that it makes sense why this song was a single, because this hook gets stuck in your head all day. It's that catchy. So overall, I really enjoyed this song. This is one of my favorite songs on this album. This is a song I've heard for years now, I just thought this was a really, really great song. The 13th song on this album is called Swoon Units. This is written by Digable Planets, and the main sample that they used for the song was No Place to Hide by the Crusaders from their studio album The Second Crusade, which was released in 1973. And honestly, I hated this song. This is my least favorite song on this album. There are a lot of things I don't like about this song. First off, this beat, there's way too many things going on. You have this short, repetitive saxophone sample that, again, they just, anytime they use a saxophone sample, it's just never used well. And this one is even more annoying than the other saxophone samples. It's played on top of this beat. It's not meshed well in. It's not mixed well in. And honestly, it just drives me insane, listening to this saxophone sample. I mean, without that, this beat would be 1,000 times better. But then the beat itself, it's like this atmospheric synth sound. And then they have the drums and the bass and the keyboard. And it just becomes way too much. It's like they just add every single ingredient they could to make this beat. And it's especially coming off of the last few songs, they've used more minimal beats. And it's I don't know what they were thinking with this beat. It's definitely experimental. They're trying something new, but it's just way too much. The chorus I thought was terrible. You have the saxophone coming back in and just drowns out the vocals. It's way too loud, and it's a terrible clash of sound. Almost becomes like a noise rock record at that point, because you're just hearing noise. It's just so does not fit the vibe at all of Digable Planets. And then I also didn't even like the rapping on this song. I think Butterfly, his second verse was really bad, and that it was surprisingly bad because Butterfly, He doesn't do bad verses. His first verse is fine, but his second verse I thought was really bad, and I think I blame that on the beat, because the beat is just so chaotic that it's messing up his flow. His wordplay just seemed off, and also Ladybug doesn't even get a verse in this song, which was disappointing to me because I'm a huge fan of Ladybug. And then in the last minute of this song, there's this skit where Butterfly is doing this spoken word performance at a jazz lounge, similar to the first song, It's Good to Be Here. And I thought the skit was cool, but it just feels very random because, this is not the last song on the album. They've used it a couple times, but it just feels like, why did they use it on this song, Especially because you're gonna have your final song next, where they also use that concept. So I don't know if this originally was the last song and then they add on the other song and left this in there. I don't know. But overall, I thought this song, like I said, was the worst song on this album. It's really, really bad. The more I listen to it, the more I hate this song. And it sucks because, I really like this group, and this album, I feel like with songs like this, like if you had taken out a couple of these songs, this could be one of the best albums, like hip hop albums of the 90s. But there's just, I don't know. I feel like maybe they needed another voice in the studio, maybe a more experienced producer or something to kind of tell them like, okay, this is a song you can cut, because it just doesn't work with this album at all for me. So yeah, I wasn't a big fan of that song. And then the 14th and last song on this album is called Examination of What. This was written by Digable Planets, and the main sample that they use for this song is called Listen and You'll See by the Crusaders from their studio album Pass the Plate, which was released in 1971. And I really like this song. I think it's a great ender for this album. The beat was really fun. It had this summertime vibe to it that ends this album off on a positive note, which I feel like the beginning and end of the album are the most important parts, and to end this album off on such a positive note, on this light, minimal beat that's not, like some of the other beats that I talked about where there's too much stuff going on. This one's more light, it's minimal, it has that summertime feel to it. It just works really well as an intro to this album. I like the rap verses on this song. Butterfly is the only member that actually has like a traditional rap verse on this song, with Ladybug and Doodlebug kind of giving this really cool like interlude skits that feel like they're almost hosts of a radio show. I thought it was cool, even though it's not, a rap verse for them, it worked well for me. And it had kind of a unique arrangement for a hip hop song, The chorus of the song I thought was very catchy. It fits the vibe, that summertime vibe perfectly. And I like the message of this song. This song is about creative freedom, how capitalism is taking over art, and, art should be something of expression. So, very kind of positive, uplifting message. I also really like how Butterfly ends this song with this spoken word outro where he shouts out all his friends and family and people who helped him make this album, which is very common in hip hop, where your last song would be kind of a shout out to everyone. And I just thought it worked really well here. Then the last minute of the song is the end part, the continuation of the skit from the first song. And it's kind of like the end where the band is leaving the stage of the jazz lounge. They're saying their goodbyes, and then they're going to travel back to, their planet in outer space. And I just thought this was a really cool concept and a really great way to remind the listener of this concept. And, remember, these skits and kind of add a great conclusion to that as the album concludes. So, overall, I thought this song was really great. A nice end to this album. And yeah, it just worked really well for me. So now I'm going to talk about my top 3 songs on this album, and this is in no particular order. The first song is Pacifics. This is the second track on this album, and this song has one of my favorite beats on this album. I love this beat. I love the bass line in this beat. It's super catchy, has great verses from all 3 members, and yeah, I just really am a big fan of that song. The second song is Last of the Spiddyocks. This was the 7th track on this album, and I just really like that they switched up, the normal jazz beat and add some complexity, and had this experimental sound that actually worked. A lot of times when bands or artists try to do something experimental, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I feel like with this song it really worked. I like how the beat becomes more complex and catchy as the song progresses. Ladybug kills her verse in this song. It's one of my favorite Ladybug verses, and it's like how it has a different style and feel from any other song on this album. It really stands out for me. And the 3rd song for me is Jimmi Diggin' Cats. That was the 8th track, and this is the song that was a tribute to Jimi Hendrix, who, like I mentioned, is one of my favorite guitar players of all time, and just one of my favorite musicians of all time. I'm a big fan, and I have so much respect for Jimi Hendrix, what he did, especially as a black man in the 60s. The impact he made on rock music is amazing. And I feel like this was a really great tribute to that. The Summertime Madness sample, probably one of my favorite samples of all time. I think it just works so well with this beat, and it works so well with this group and just the style in which they rap. I think they killed that song, the rapping on that song. Butterfly's first verse is just amazing. It may be one of my favorite verses on the entire album, and this is like a hidden gem for this album. This is a song I'd never heard before, and I've heard a good amount of Digable Planets songs before listening to this album, but this is a song that not a lot of people talk about, and I think it's just a really well-made song. That sample is amazing, and I really enjoyed it. So those are my top 3 songs on this album. Again, Pacifics, Last of the Spiddyocks, and Jimmi Diggin' Cats. Now I'm going to talk about some of my overall thoughts on this album that I had. The first thought I want to talk about is I like that this album had a concept. This is a concept album. This group is almost a concept group because the idea of this group of being insects from outer space who, have all these weird thoughts and in this different style, coming to New York, doing this hip-hop performance in this jazz lounge. I just thought it's a really cool, unique concept for an album and for a group. It just really helps Digable Planets to stand out and have this, different vibe to them, this alternative vibe. It just really works for me. And also it helps that they have such a unique flow and style, especially for the hip hop of that time period. They really were innovators for, the more jazz rap style, along with bands like A Tribe Called Quest, The Far Side. There's a lot of other bands that did that, but their style, their use of, jazz style slang and, the way they said certain lyrics and words, it's just so interesting and unique, and it's such a great, contrast to what was going on in hip-hop at this time, especially throughout the whole 90s when, Tupac and Biggie Smalls came in, and it just became way more about gangster rap, which I like that, the gangster rap too, and I like different rap from that time period, but this just really stood out to me, just as being so different. And I just like that throughout this album they kept that concept alive, even though it's kind of flaky at times. For the first song and the last song, they remind you of this concept, and they committed to it. So I just thought that was really cool. I also really like the rap verses on this album. I think Butterfly is a really talented rapper. He has such a unique style that basically he can adapt to any beat. His style is very loose, just a great flow, and he's my favorite rapper in this group. Almost all of his verses I thought were great, and he just has something unique about him that makes him stand out that I just really enjoy. Also his lyrics, he talks about some heavy stuff. He's not afraid of tackling controversial subjects, uncomfortable subject matter, and just I just really appreciate him even more after listening to this entire album. Ladybug, I thought she did a great job on this album. I feel, again, like I mentioned earlier, I think she's underrated, especially when it comes to female MCs. I think she is someone who's really good, especially for the 90s and the early 90s, where there wasn't a lot of female MCs out there. I think she really killed that kind of sing rap style, that, someone like Lauryn Hill really made popular like later on in the 90s. So, I really enjoyed her performance on this album, even though she doesn't get a lot of opportunities to rap. That's one thing I kind of wish she and Doodlebug kind of had a little bit more songs to kind of help them stand out. And then I think that Doodlebug is not my favorite rapper on this album, to be honest. I don't think he's very good, but he adds a cool factor to this group. Also, I like groups that have three, people in them. I mean, that's kind of like a nitpicky random thing, but when you have three different rappers or even more, like a Wu-Tang Clan or something, it makes the songs cooler because you get to hear these different perspectives, and it just feels like a posse cut each time. So, I appreciate that he's on this album just to add another unique style and point of view to these songs. And I also really enjoyed his verses for the songs Rebirth, The Slick, and Nickel Bags. I thought he actually really killed those verses, and his more, slower old school style actually really worked well on those beats. So yeah, overall, I really enjoyed all three members rapping. I like that they have more of a spoken word style than just the traditional rap style, and it really makes this group stand out. I also wanted to talk about the beats on this record. I really like that they used heavily sampled of jazz beats. It's a very jazz-centric record. In a sense, this is like the most jazz-centric out of those jazz rap groups at this time, because a lot of those groups like Tribe Called Quest and De La Soul, they would use the jazz samples, but they would use heavy like 808 beats on top of that, and just it had that jazz feel to it. But this album is just kind of has even more of a jazz feel to it. This is an album that I actually think jazz fans who aren't necessarily fans of hip-hop would actually enjoy, because this is an album that is basically half jazz, half hip-hop. It has that much of a jazz influence. And even on the rhymes that they use, the wordplay, they reference a lot of jazz. They reference a lot of jazz figures, and just their history with jazz music, so you can tell they're real jazz fans. Also, Butterfly, I think, has a great ear for beats. He was basically the main producer on this album. I think the other two producers helped more with the mixing, but he's the one that picked out a lot of the beats, and he said that most of the samples that he picked were from his dad's old jazz collection. So, anyone can kind of go through jazz records and kind of pick out beats, but the beats he chose were really unique and just really well done. And I think doing that is an art. Picking out samples, in my opinion, is art, because it's not as easy as it sounds. And he has a really good ear for picking out beats that are very creative and really complement the rap style of this band really well. And the last point I wanted to mention is, even though this album is very inconsistent for me, I do appreciate how creative this album is. This group takes a lot of risks, does a lot of experimentation with their beat selection, with their songs. They always keep it fresh. And I really appreciate that, because, not all these risks pay off. And that's what happens when you take risk, when you choose to be creative and not just stick to the same sound. No matter what genre that you're making your music in, rock music, hip-hop music, pop music, it doesn't matter. If you're artist and you're making music that all sounds the same, it gets boring after a while. And I like that they took creative chances. This is an album where no song is really just average or just okay. Even the songs that I don't like, they're so weird and experimental and make such bold choices. I kind of appreciate them. I appreciate the fact that they're taking these creative risks with these songs. And I feel like that's what art is. That's what music is expression of yourself, taking risks, trying new stuff out. Some of these didn't work for me. Some of these are huge misses for me. But I do just appreciate that. I wanted to mention that because I feel like, especially in hip hop, A lot of groups just kind of keep with the style that made them, and I just appreciate this band on this album really tried different stuff out, kind of reminds me of the Roots in that way, where the Roots would do, different styles on these albums. This album just had so many different styles to it, and they weren't afraid to switch stuff up, do more of a jazz style, more an R&B, more of a funk, and just go into all these different styles. So because of that, this is an album of very high peaks and very low valleys. This is a very polarizing album in that way, where I can see someone saying this is the greatest album of all time. I can see other people saying, this album's terrible, and it's like it has that polarizing factor to it, which I think great art does. And now I'm going to give my overall rating for this album. I give this album 3.5 out of 5. I thought this was a very good album, but this album was inconsistent. So for me, a 3.5 is an album that's very good, but it's too inconsistent for me to give it a higher rating. It's definitely above average album. I enjoyed this album a lot, especially for a debut album. I thought they did a great job of really establishing themselves, especially the first 3 songs. They really established who they were, which is what you want out of a debut album. I like the concept that they had. The beats and the rapping for the most part is really well done. It's just inconsistencies. Some songs just really didn't work. And this is an album that I feel like if they just had more time in the kitchen, they brought in more producers or just another ear to just listen to this, I think they could have made it even better. But this is still a very solid album, especially for a debut album. I really enjoy the subject matter that they get into with some of these songs, the different tributes that they do, the positive women's rights message that they have, the positive black message that they have, being pro-black, being proud of being black. I think that's a great, very important message. So yeah, I respect the creative choices that they made. It's just not all of them work for me. But I still think this is a very good album that I really enjoyed listening to. And now I'm going to talk about who I would recommend this album for. This is where I mention some artists that I feel like if you're fans of these artists or similar artists to these, you'll probably enjoy this album. So first, I would recommend this album to people who are fans of more classic artists like A Tribe Called Quest, Gangstar, The Far Side, Souls of Mischief, De La Soul, and Pete Rock and CL Smooth. These are artists that I feel like if you're fans of these groups, if you're fans of this style of hip-hop music, you'll probably enjoy Digable Planets and specifically this album because there's a lot of similarities between those groups that I mentioned and Digable Planets. I would also recommend this album to people who are fans of more modern artists like Loyal Carner, Saba, Mick Jenkins, No Name, Blue, and Odyssey. These are artists that remind me a lot of Digable Planets, and I feel like if you're fans of these artists or similar artists in that kind of alternative rap, jazz rap style, I feel like you'll enjoy Digable Planets. A lot of these artists were influenced by Digable Planets and specifically this album. So I think if you're fans of these artists and you want to explore something, especially some hip hop from the 90s, I definitely think this is the album for you. And that does it for this album review for the album Reachin, subtitle A New Refutation of Time and Space by the group Digable Planets. I want to thank everyone for listening. Hope you all enjoyed this review and have a great day. Peace out.
In nature, sounds exist in space.